It's fair from the injury standpoint because we always talk about the mental hurdle is bigger than the physical hurdle. And I certainly see Sam Bradford, we talked about it yesterday, seeing ghosts in the pocket. He's seeing things that aren't there. He's imagining a pass rush when he has plenty of time. So I do think there's a lot of evidence that says he isn't over that mental hurdle. As far as the up-tempo stuff, I don't buy that as much, only because, if anything, the Eagles have kind of slowed it down in recent weeks. And before that, when they were really, really ineffective, they weren't getting first down, so they were never on the field, so he didn't have to worry about that tempo. So I haven't seen any lack of conditioning or any aspect of that coming to the forefront. But I certainly buy into the fact that he's hesitant. And we kind of talked off there, all three of us, including Pete, about, what's the difference between a quarterback going through two ACLs and a wide receiver like Jeremy Maclin. And it's really the mental aspect. Macklin's overcome it. The mental hurdle, Bradford hasn't.
Yeah, and that's evident because, as we talked about, too, yesterday, Thomas Davis has 3 ACL injuries, and he might be having the best season that he has ever had. And he's a guy that's got to move lateral, playing linebacker. There's a lot of starting and stopping. So I think that's a lot. And as Peter said, there's guys around his feet, and he's worried about it. So, is that trickling into why he's playing so poorly? We don't know. But he certainly looks like he's holding something back. That is, if you were to say to me, what is the one thing about Sam Bradford that you're noticing that's causing him to struggle, John? I would say he's holding back. There's something he is holding back. He's not letting it go. He's not letting it loose. He's not airing it out.
Yeah, I would say it's the comfort factor. If I had to boil it down to one thing, he looks incredibly uncomfortable. And what concerns me is the Giants game, as I said yesterday. And it was evident by Pro Football Focus. They sent me their grades from yesterday. It was better than I thought. Both of the Eagles' tackles didn't give up one pressure in the game. He's never going to get a cleaner pocket in this level than he had on Monday night, and he was still uncomfortable. So until he gets past that aspect of it, I don't see how it's going to get much better. You'll probably see streaks because he's got, we constantly talk about the arm talent and all that, and some of that is there. So you're going to see stretches of play where he looks pretty good, but the consistency is not going to be there until he feels more comfortable.
How much, now you're at training camp, how much more, much stronger of an arm, how much more just raw talent does Bradford have next to Sanchez? People forget Sanchez was the number 5 overall pick. Say what you want about him. There was many people who at one point thought he was very talented. Not to say that he's not, but at one point he was a top 5 player in the draft.
Yeah, they're both very talented as far as, the skill set.
Well, because I don't think people, John, I don't think people look at Sanchez as a guy with this cannon for an arm and, a guy who can really sling it down the field.
Yeah, they should. They're being unfair if they don't think, and he showed it in certain games last year when he came into play. He really got it going at times, throwing the football. He has a ton of talent. There's no question about it. As you mentioned, a top 5 pick versus a number 1 pick. So they're both very high level players when it comes to just the raw measurables. And the thing that set Bradford apart, according to nearly every draft person who rated him, was the accuracy. So that's mainly what set him apart from a guy like Mark Sanchez. However, it's not shown up to this point. So people can talk about the accuracy. There was that, Jeff Fisher quote, if you remember, in the preseason when he was talking about the trade, and he said the football never hit the ground in 7-on-7s. He was so accurate. Well, there's a big difference between 7-on-7s and training camp when you got the red shirt on and a live rush against a top-tier defense. We saw a live rush that couldn't even get there, and Sam was spooked. So, and Chip kind of talked about that yesterday with the bullets firing. We have to do a better job in practice of kind of simulating that. I don't know how you can simulate that in practice because everyone knows It's not live. Everyone knows you can't hit the quarterback, so it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, I don't know how you simulate getting hit. You just can't do it on a quarterback because everybody's afraid for their quarterback to actually get hit. Let's talk a little bit about today at practice. Michael Kendrick's back on the field, John. A sense that he will play on Sunday, and if so, what is his role with Jordan Hicks?
Well, it's day to day. He's like all of us, I guess. But you know, it's funny. Bill Davis seemed more concerned that Michael Kendricks would play, and he practiced, than D'Amico Ryan, who didn't practice. I kind of talked about D'Amico and said, you know him, he's a warrior. He'll probably be out there. When he talked about Kendricks, he said, I'm not sure, even though he's a full go at practice. So I think that kind of tells you the mindset of the defensive coordinator and how he feels he can rely on D'Amico Ryans, and he can't on Michael Kendricks. But my best guess is one of them will play and one of them won't, and Jordan Hicks will still be in there. It's just a matter of who's next to him. Yeah, and
obviously Kendricks, who's been out for a couple of weeks, Hicks has been really a guy that we've talked a lot about, but I don't know how they, you know, because I guess Alonzo practiced a little bit today. I don't think there's any anticipation that he'll play, John, but how they, you know, we were worried about, not worried, but how they were going to rotate the three of those guys. Now you throw a fourth guy into the mix. Who's the guy whose time gets cut into?
Well, she'll have some time. With Kiko talked after practice, and he's got the game against Dallas after the bye in mind. So he was back in limited fashion, but he's not going to play against Carolina. So they have a little bit more time to kind of figure out that rotation that's going to be very, very crowded and very, very talented, because you're going to have four guys that deserve to play. And because of their veteran status, even though they've been out, you would imagine when everybody's up and ready, even though it's probably not fair, it's going to be Jordan Hicks as the odd man out.
Yeah, and I find that hard to believe, too. I mean, he's been a guy who's been impactful, but you think about it this way, Kendricks, you know, he's made plays in the limited time he's been out there, and the very short amount of time that we've seen from Alonzo, he made maybe the play of the game to keep the Eagles in that Monday nighter when he made an interception in the end zone there. So I wouldn't want to be Bill Davis trying to juggle those guys. Do you see any of those guys being a candidate to get moved to an outside spot?
Well, it would be most, you know, an easier option for a guy like Kendricks because of his natural speed, but he has height deficiencies which make him less likely to play outside, whereas Kiko is very tall. As you saw, you mentioned that interception. He showed his incredible ranginess on that particular play. So both of those guys could play outside, but I got to tell you, the Eagles have never shown any indication, even when we were questioning in the preseason about their depth at outside linebacker. Remember how bad that was. They moved Vinny Curry to outside linebacker rather than Michael Kendricks or Kiko Alonso. So I don't think they have any intent on moving any of them outside.
All right, John McMullen with us. Let's look at some NFC East notes here. Dez Bryant misses practice today. The chances against the Giants look to be a little slimmer. When do you think Dez will be back in full form? I mean, a lot of people, is this the Cowboys just desperate trying to get him out there to play, you know, in practice this week? I mean, what's the legitimate timetable in your mind for Dez Bryant?
Well, the Cowboys originally said 6 to 8 weeks, and we're at basically 5.5 weeks. So it's getting closer, but most of the people saw that 6 to 8 and the injury and said that's being kind of optimistic and put it more at 8 to 10. So I think it's going to be more of an 8-week injury, 2 months exactly, and we're heading towards 6 weeks. So it's probably going to be a couple more until Dez is back on the field, unless those, and we talked about it yesterday, unless those stem cells really do their job. You know, I doubt it.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys are it doesn't make that much sense, because it seems to me they're trying to prop up their fan base and get the fans excited and say he's right around the corner. And at the end of the day, if he doesn't show up on Sunday, it doesn't matter.
Well, right. It almost seems like the fan base is starting to bail on that team because of the weed-in and because of the, you know, just the fact that they've lost 3 in a row, and they're trying to keep them interested in a team that they know the snowball's rolling down the side of the mountain here.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know what real effect that has on the team itself, because even if Dez comes back a little early, you risk further injury. And remember, it's not Tony Romo throwing to him anyway. It's Matt Castle or Brandon Weeden if something happens to Castle. So until they're both back, you really are going to have issues in Dallas, and that's just the reality, unfortunately, of their situation.
Yeah, and I know they play the Giants this week, a really big game for both of those teams. I mean, Dallas really needs to win this game just to kind of keep pace here, because if they lose again, that's 4 in a row, and if the Eagles, I know an Eagles are an underdog, but if Dallas loses 4 in a row here, that's a you're really starting to fall back here. And then, of course, the Giants, same situation. So that's a really interesting game between those two. The game's in New York, but Dallas coming off the bye there. Obviously we're a little early here, but who's that game bigger for, New York or Dallas?
Well, I think it's bigger for Dallas for just what you mentioned. They have to find a way to scratch out maybe one win in this stretch without, obviously, the quarterback and Dez Bryant. They have to do it because if you think back to Aaron Rodgers' injury a couple of years ago, the Packers basically weren't able to win a game when he was out. They had one tie, and he was able to come back week 17, save the season, win the division with a big win in Chicago. That's what Dallas is hoping for. But obviously Romo is scheduled to come back a little bit earlier, and they want to run the table when he's back playing. Is that possible? I think it is, because if Romo's out there, if Dez Bryant's out there, if the running game gets clicking at some point, it's obviously a very talented team, but you have to keep your head above water. You have to make sure when they get back, they're meaningful games, and that's what the Cowboys are fighting for right now. The fact that the NFC East is so poor certainly helps them in that aspect.
Yeah, no doubt. John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, has plenty on the Eagles as they get ready for the Carolina Panthers. That's real quick. Look at Carolina here. What is the what would you say is we know they're very good on defense, and of course with Cam Newton, but what would you say is the identity of this Carolina team, who is undefeated? I don't know that they get enough respect or do respect from a lot of people around the league when they're one of these undefeated teams. They've been to the playoffs 2 years in a row, albeit with not great records, but they did win a playoff game last year.
Yeah, and when the Eagles really beat up on Carolina, if you remember, Cam Newton was banged up in that game really badly.
Real bad.
But he played. Yeah, and, he's a horse. And when he's healthy, and he's healthy now, this is the first time all season they've seen a dual threat like this. And it's not like last year, because he can move, and he can run the sweeps, and he can run the quarterback draws, and he can run the zone read. And you're going to see what Chip Kelly wants done on his side of the football with Cam Newton. So he's certainly the identity of the team, and it only increased in Seattle with that great comeback in the fourth quarter and what he was able to do. And I encourage everyone to look at that quarterback sweep they ran at the goal line, because that play is, as I said, I don't know if it's defensible. It's just unbelievable. And that's what you're dealing with Carolina. It's a quarterback that's very difficult to defend, because you never know what he's going to do. He's a tremendous runner, and he's a great thrower. And even though the Panthers don't have a ton of weapons outside of Greg Olsen, he can extend plays and do a lot of that Russell Wilson stuff, but he's got an extra 50 pounds and 4 inches. So he is really, really tough to deal with.
And, of course, that Eagles and Panthers game you can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have more from John tomorrow as we obviously get closer to the matchup. And then the Eagles, of course, also out today, Cooper and Aguilar at practice, but it looks like Cooper more likely to play. Aguilar, it's kind of a mystery there. That injury must be a little bit worse than they anticipated, because I guess they thought he might play last week. Now he's not practicing again.
Yeah, I'm going to have to call Dave Isaac for advice on the injury situation, because they're going the hockey route now. It's always upper body, lower body. We know it's an ankle with Aguilar or a leg or something. And they said he was 50-50 to go for the Giants game, and all of a sudden he doesn't practice again. So they want to almost pump the brakes on him, because he had been playing so poorly, and let him have a breath mid-season maybe and and hopefully build them up confidence-wise and get them back on the field, because we've talked as much as the Sam Bradford struggle real. The second aspect of this receiving group is not very good.
No, it's not, and we'll see it evolve if Cooper's out too. I mean, who would have thought we're saying, "Ooh, what if Cooper doesn't play?" That's unbelievable.
The deep threat.
Yeah,
Cooper's the deep threat.
We need Cooper, the 13 version of him, back. And all right, John McMullen, more at 973ESPN.com at JF McMullen for the hate mail. All right, man.
All right, thanks, Mike.